The hand rests on the chest. The breath comes out slow, almost inaudible, and somewhere between the third rib and the throat of your dog, something measurable just shifted. That tiny exhale you have heard 1,000 times is the only piece of fully honest evidence you will ever get about what your dog feels in that moment. Most owners hear it and pet right past it. They register the sound, file it under boredom or tiredness, and miss the only thing in the room that just told the truth. The common reading of the sigh is that the dog is winding down for the night, or worse, that the dog is bored and ready for the petting to end. Owners hear the long exhale and assume their dog is checking out. The opposite is closer to what is actually happening. A sigh during gentle petting is not the dog stepping away from the moment. It is the body confirming, in the only language it has, that the moment landed. The diaphragm only releases like that after the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of the body responsible for rest and recovery, has just taken the wheel from the part that was watching the room. The breath that comes out of your dog is the audible byproduct of a switch you cannot see flipping inside them. Sadness has a different rhythm. Boredom has different eyes. The contented sigh has a signature, and there is now a small library of research that has measured what is happening in the body the second it occurs. A 2014 study from a German research team led by Kune brought 28 pet dogs into a controlled setting and recorded what happened to their hearts during different kinds of human touch. Heart rate variability, which is the gap between beats and a clean indicator of how relaxed the nervous system actually is. Posture, tiny mouth and eye signals. The result that mattered most was this. Petting on the chest and on the area under the chin produced a sharp rise in heart rate variability, the marker that means the calming brake of the body has been pressed. The vagus nerve, which runs from the brainstem down through the chest, drops the heart rate when it is engaged. Petting in those specific zones recruited it. Petting on the top of the head or near the back end mostly did not. So the sigh you hear when your hand is laid flat on your dog's chest is not random. It is the diaphragm relaxing in the half-second after the heart rate drops, after the vagus has slowed the rhythm, after the body has agreed that the room is safe. A respiratory comma at the end of a sentence the body just finished writing. The same effect shows up in a study run a few years later by Mariti and her colleagues in Italy. They took 10 pet dogs and tested 2 conditions before the owner left them alone for a brief separation. In one, the owner gently petted the dog for 5 minutes before walking out the door. In the other, the owner stayed quietly in the room without contact. The dogs that had been petted held their composure for measurably longer after the owner was gone, and their heart rate after the door closed was lower, with a p-value of about 0.073, which sits right next to the standard cutoff of statistical significance in a sample of just 10. 5 minutes of contact, and the body of the dog kept the calm working long after the hand had left. The sigh, in other words, is not a 1-second event. It is the surface of a slower process, a kind of biological residue that lingers. When your dog exhales under your hand, you are not just hearing a single relaxation, you are hearing the body lay down a few minutes of buffer against whatever the next part of the day brings. What is happening in the bloodstream during those minutes is the second half of the answer. In 2021, a research group in Poland, led by Karpinski, drew blood from 40 pet dogs before and after their owners petted them. Cortisol, the stress hormone the body produces when it senses a threat or a demand, dropped after petting across the sample. Serotonin, the chemical associated with mood stability and contentment, rose. 2 molecules moving in opposite directions inside the dog within the span of one short interaction with a familiar human hand. And there is a third molecule. In a small Italian pilot study from 2020, Oggi and Mariti tested 8 trained dogs in 2 conditions: 5 minutes of positive interaction with a familiar trainer who petted and spoke gently to them, and 5 minutes of isolation. Salivary oxytocin, the bonding hormone that climbs when humans hold their infants and when old friends greet each other, rose significantly in the petted dogs, with a p-value of 0.036. In the isolated dogs, it did not move, so the sigh you hear is not just nervous system, it is also blood chemistry rearranging itself in real time. Cortisol falling, serotonin rising, oxytocin climbing. The exhale is the cover note on a letter the body is writing in 3 different inks at once. And yet, the sigh is not always what it sounds like. The same Coon study that showed chest petting recruiting the calm response also documented something most owners never see. When dogs displayed what looked like soft content signals, slow blinking, a head turned to the side, a low body posture, those signals were sometimes associated with a heart rate that had actually gone up, not down. The dog looked relaxed on the outside while the inside was working to manage the situation. Researchers call those small movements appeasement signals, and they are not the same thing as the relaxation cascade. They are a quiet, polite negotiation, a request, in body language, for the human to slow down, ease off, give space. So the question gets sharper. Was that sound your dog just made the diaphragm releasing because the parasympathetic system took over? Or was it a tense exhale layered on top of a heart rate that is climbing? The answer is in the rest of the body. A real post-petting contented sigh sits inside a soft jaw, slack ears, a body that has gone heavy against your hand. A stress sigh sits inside repeated lip licking, a head that keeps turning slightly away, a white sliver of eye showing at the corner, a body that is not leaning in. The sigh itself is the same shape of sound. The body around it is what tells you which one you are listening to. Most petting on a familiar dog by a familiar hand on the chest will produce the first kind. Petting on the head by a stranger for too long can produce the second. There is something quiet about the fact that the truest thing a dog says to you all day might be a sound that takes less than a second. They cannot tell you in words. They cannot send a message. They cannot, unless you are paying close attention, even ask you to keep going. What they have is a body that runs honest reports on the situation, and a breath that comes out when those reports are good. A few minutes of being touched by someone they trust pulls the stress hormone down in their blood, raises the bonding hormone in their saliva, slows their heart, and finally, when all of that stacks into a single moment, releases the diaphragm. They have no way to lie about that. There is no version of their nervous system that fakes a vagal response to make you feel better. The sigh is one of the few moments in the day where what your dog feels and what your dog shows are the exact same thing. That is a small kind of privilege. Most relationships in your life do not get a signal that clean. You get one a dozen times a week, and most of them slip past you in the time it takes to scroll past a notification. Worth knowing what to actually look for because the dosage matters. A real sigh of release usually arrives within the first 1 to 3 minutes of calm contact, when your hand is on the chest, the throat, or just behind the ear, and your dog has leaned in or settled their weight against you. If the sighs start to mix with repeated lip licks, slow turns of the head away, a sudden stiffness in the shoulders, or eyes that keep tracking back to your hand, the body has crossed a line. The dog has had enough. Pause the petting. Give a beat of space. Let the breathing reset on its own. And if your dog stops sighing during contact entirely or starts sighing heavily at rest in a way that is new for them, that pattern has shifted into something a vet should hear about. Persistent, unprovoked sighing can sometimes flag respiratory or cardiac changes worth checking. Most of the time, though, the sigh you have been hearing for years is exactly what it sounds like. A confession of trust. So, when the hand goes back on the chest tonight and the breath comes out slow, listen for it differently. That sound is not boredom. It is not tiredness. It is a small molecular ceremony. The cortisol stepping down, the serotonin lifting, the oxytocin rising, the vagus tightening its grip on the heartbeat, all of it folded into a single quiet exhale aimed in your direction. Your dog is not telling you they are done. They are telling you they are here, and that here, with your hand on them, is the safest report their body can file. Most owners will hear that sound 1,000 more times and never decode it. You won't hear it the same way again.